She was heavily pregnant, starving, and abandoned by the very woman who gave her life. One cruel lie had turned her world to ash, and the man she loved was rotting in a prison cell for a crime he never committed. Broken, humiliated, and kneeling on the hot city concrete, Amara held out a plastic plate, begging a billionaire stranger for his leftover food. She never imagined that the man standing before her didn't just have food, he held the keys to a secret that would destroy her enemies and rewrite her destiny forever. Before we begin, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so you never miss our emotional and inspiring stories. Let's dive in. Amara had never believed that wealth was the measure of a human soul. Certainly not the diamonds and silk that her mother, Madame Beatrice, worshipped. While Beatrice measured a man's worth by the weight of his pockets, Amara measured it by the kindness of his heart. And that was exactly why she fell for Daniel. To the world, Daniel was just a dusty shoemaker working under a faded umbrella, stitching worn-out sandals with bruised hands. Back to Amara, he was home. Every evening, she would sneak away from her mother's mansion to sit on his wooden stool, sharing roasted corn and dreams. She saw a king where her mother saw a peasant. Back in a world ruled by status, love often comes with a terrible price. Daniel never shouted like the other street vendors. He never chased customers or begged for work. He simply sat, head bent, hands steady, repairing shoes with the kind of tenderness one would use to mend a broken heart. And every time Amara passed by, he looked up with that soft smile, gentle, respectful, warm. It was a smile that made her steps slow and her chest flutter for reasons she could not explain. Amara came from a comfortable home. Her mother, Madame Beatrice, was a woman who believed dignity walked hand in hand with wealth. Poverty was a disease she believed only the foolish caught. But Amara saw beauty in simplicity, and truth in Daniel's eyes. It started on a Thursday afternoon, with the sun high and harsh. Amara stopped by Daniel's stand with a sandal that wasn't really torn, just a tiny stitch undone, but she needed an excuse to stand close to him. "Can you fix it for me?" she asked softly. Daniel did not touch the sandal immediately. He looked at her first, his expression wrapping around her like a warm blanket. "Of course," he said. "Sit. It won't take long." She sat. That day, they talked more than usual. They laughed. Amara found herself sharing things she had never said to anyone, not even to her mother. Daniel listened, really listened, with eyes that held sincerity deeper than gold. That evening, as she walked home, she knew her heart had crossed a line it could never return from. Days turned into weeks. Their bond grew, not in loud declarations, but in silent companionship. She brought him lunch sometimes. He gave her free repairs even when she insisted on paying. They talked about dreams, fears, and life. They talked like two souls who recognized each other in a crowded world. Then one evening, just as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and turned the sky orange, Daniel cleared his throat nervously. "Amara," he began, his voice trembling just slightly. I don't have much. I don't even know if I'm worthy of you, but you've become the most important part of my life." Amara blinked rapidly, her heart pounding. Daniel reached into his pocket and brought out a tiny velvet patch. Inside was a simple silver band. Not fancy, not expensive, but bought with months of saving and sacrifice. "I love you," he whispered. "Please, will you marry me?" Amara's breath caught. She felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness, but from overwhelming tenderness. "Yes," she breathed. "Daniel, yes." He exhaled in relief, his hands trembling as he slid the ring onto her finger. They hugged, clinging to each other like two hearts afraid to ever let go. But love, as beautiful as it is, often attracts storms. The day everything changed, Daniel came with the elders to ask for Amara's hand. They dressed in their finest traditional attire, carrying cola nuts and wine as custom required. Amara wore a simple gown, her heart bursting with excitement. But Madame Beatrice stood at the center of the living room like a storm waiting to strike. Her eyes scanned Daniel from head to toe. The worn shoes, the cheap shirt, the humble posture. She sneered as though smelling something rotten. "So, this is the man?" she asked coldly. Daniel bowed respectfully. "Good afternoon, ma." Beatrice didn't answer the greeting. Instead, She folded her arms and laughed harshly, mockingly. Is this a joke? My daughter, my only child, married a shoemaker. Amara's face burned with embarrassment. Ma'am, please stop. Shut up. Beatrice snapped. I warned you about associating with poor people. See the nonsense you've brought into my house. Daniel kept his head down, absorbing every insult without reacting. His elders remained calm, respectfully pleading their case. But Beatrice was a stone cold, unmoving, unreasonable. You will never marry my daughter, she declared. Not while I am alive. Mother, I love him. Amara cried. Love. Beatrice scoffed. Love does not pay bills. Love does not buy houses. Love does not take care of a family. Poverty destroys marriage. And this poor boy wants to use you to climb out of his misery. Daniel felt the words land on him like blows, but he remained silent. If you marry him, Beatrice continued sharply, you are no longer my daughter. The room fell still. Amara's heart cracked, her eyes filled with tears as she looked at the man she loved, and the mother she feared losing. Daniel stepped forward, voice calm, but heavy. Ma, I truly love your daughter. You will work hard. I said, get out of my house. Beatrice screamed. The elders rose quietly, touched Daniel's shoulder, and guided him toward the door. Amara ran after him, sobbing. Daniel, I'm so sorry. He wiped her tears gently, even though his own heart was bleeding. It's not your fault, he whispered. Some mountains take time to move. As Daniel walked away that day, Amara felt her world shaking. Something inside her told her that the path she had chosen would not be an easy one, and her mother's wrath was only beginning. Life in the Okafor mansion was a suffocating parade of velvet curtains and cold marble floors. For Amara, every meal was a business meeting, and every conversation with her mother, Madame Beatrice, was a lecture on social climbing. Beatrice, a woman who wore her arrogance like a second skin, had one goal, to merge their family name with the elite. She spoke of marriage not as a union of souls, but as a merger of assets. Love is for the poor, Amara, she would say, sipping imported wine while scrolling through the profiles of wealthy suitors on her tablet. Security is for us. Chief Felix has 3 estates in Abuja and a seat in the Senate. That is the kind of man you smile at. But Amara's smiles were not for sale. Every evening, while Beatrice was distracted by her high-profile business calls, Amara would trade her silk gowns for a simple wrapper and slip out through the back gate. The transition was instant, from the air-conditioned silence of wealth to the vibrant, dusty, chaotic rhythm of the streets. Here, the air smelled of exhaust and roasted plantain, but to Amara, it smelled like freedom. Her destination was always the same, a small, tattered umbrella under a mango tree where Daniel sat. Daniel, with his rough hands and gentle eyes, was everything her world was not. It was a shoemaker, a man who spent his days bent over the worn-out soles of strangers, stitching their broken miles back together. It possessed nothing that Madame Beatrice would value, yet he held everything Amara craved. She watched him from a distance before approaching. A young schoolboy in a torn uniform stood before him, looking ashamed of his flapping sole. Daniel didn't ask for money. He simply smiled, glued the shoe with expert care, and polished it until it shone. When the boy tried to offer a crumbled, dirty note, Daniel gently pushed his hand back. Keep it, he said softly. Buy yourself lunch. That was Daniel, rich in kindness, even when his pockets were empty. When Amara finally sat on the wooden stool beside him, the noise of the city seemed to fade into a comfortable silence. You escaped again, Daniel teased, his voice a low rumble that settled her anxious heart. He handed her a piece of roasted pear, wrapped in old newspaper. It was humble food, paid for with the few coins he made, but as Amara took a bite, it tasted sweeter than the grandest feast in her mother's dining room. In the shadow of his umbrella, surrounded by old shoes and honest labor, Amara found a peace that her mother's millions could never buy. She knew the dangers of this double life, but looking at Daniel's content face, she knew she would risk everything to keep it. The illusion of their secret paradise shattered on a Tuesday evening, not with a whisper, but with the screeching of tires that tore through the quiet market street. Amara's heart stopped as she recognized the sleek, black SUV swerving to a halt just meters from Daniel's umbrella. The engine hummed like a predatory beast, and before the dust could even settle, the back door flew open. Madame Beatrice stepped out, her heels clicking ominously against the cracked pavement, her presence sucking the oxygen right out of the air. Amara scrambled off the wooden stool, her hands trembling. "Mommy," she gasped, the blood draining from her face. Beatrice didn't look at her daughter. Her eyes, cold and sharp as shards of glass, were fixed on Daniel. She walked towards him slowly, scanning his worn-out shirt, his calloused hands, and the pile of old shoes at his feet with an expression of pure, unadulterated revulsion. It was the way one would look at a stain on a silk dress. Daniel stood up immediately, wiping his hands on his trousers in a nervous attempt to be presentable. He bowed his head low, maintaining his respect even in the face of her hostility. "Good evening, Ma," he said, his voice steady but quiet. "Don't you dare," Beatrice hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "Don't you dare open your mouth to speak to me." She turned to Amara, grabbing her arm with a grip that was bruised. "Is this it? Is this the filth you sneak out of my house to roll around in? Do leave a mansion to sit in the gutter." "Mum, please," Amara pleaded, tears already stinging her eyes as passers-by began to stop and stare. "Is a good man. Is. He is a rat." Beatrice screamed, the word echoing down the street, silencing the chatter of the market. She kicked at Daniel's toolbox, sending his brushes and polished tins scattering into the dirt. "A dirty, scavenging rat looking for a way into my kitchen. Look at him, Amara. It smells of poverty. It smells of failure." Daniel didn't move to pick up his tools. It stood like a statue, bearing the weight of her insults without flinching, though Amara could see the muscle in his jaw tightening. "If I ever," Beatrice leaned in close to Daniel, pointing a manicured finger in his face, "if I ever catch you near my daughter again, I will not just destroy this little roadside hut. I will bury you under it. Do you understand?" She didn't wait for an answer. She yanked Amara toward the car, shoving her into the leather backseat like an unruly prisoner. "Driver, move." Beatrice barked, slamming the door shut. As the car sped away, kicking up a fresh cloud of dust, Amara pressed her face against the tinted glass, sobbing as she watched Daniel slowly bend down to pick up his scattered tools, a lone figure of dignity amidst the debris of her mother's wrath. The silence in Amara's room was heavy, broken only by the sound of her own ragged breathing as she sat on the cold bathroom tiles. In her hand, the small white stick confirmed what her body had been whispering for days. 2 lines. Positive. For a moment, the world tilted on its axis, spinning between sheer terror and a sudden, blinding hope. She touched her flat stomach, her mind racing not to the scandal, but to the solution. This was it. This was the miracle they needed. Amara knew her mother better than anyone, or so she thought. Madame Beatrice was a woman of iron pride, but she was also a woman who obsessed over legacy. She would never allow her own flesh and blood, her grandchild, to be born into shame. Surely, the arrival of a baby would force her hand. It would crumble the wall of classism she had built between them, binding the family together by blood, which was thicker than money. A smile, naive and desperate, touched Amara's lips. She wasn't just carrying a child, she was carrying a bargaining chip for their happiness. That evening, under the cover of a moonless sky, Amara bribed the new gateman and slipped out. She met Daniel behind the old market stalls, away from prying eyes. He looked thinner, the stress of the past weeks etched into the lines around his eyes. When she grabbed his hands, placing them over her stomach, he froze. "I'm pregnant, Daniel," she whispered, her eyes shining with tears of relief. "We're going to be parents." Daniel didn't cheer. He didn't lift her up and spin her around. Instead, the color drained from his face. He pulled his hands back slowly, running them over his short hair in a gesture of profound worry. "Amara, this is..." He struggled for the words. "Your mother. She hates me. This won't make her accept me. It will make her destroy me." "No," Amara insisted, stepping closer and gripping his shirt. "She cares about her reputation too much. She can't hide a grandchild. She have to let us marry to save face. Don't you see? This forces her to bless us." Daniel looked at her, his heart breaking at her innocence. He saw the storm coming that she was blind to. He knew that for people like Madame Beatrice, power always trumped blood. But looking into Amara's hopeful, desperate eyes, he couldn't bring himself to shatter her dreams just yet. He pulled her into a tight embrace, burying his face in the crook of her neck. "I am scared for you," he murmured into her skin, his voice thick with emotion. "But if this is our path, then I will walk it. You will love this child with everything I have. We will face her together." He held her as if she were made of glass, terrified that at any moment, the world would reach out and break her. Amara stood in the doorway of the living room, her hands protectively clutching her stomach, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Madame Beatrice sat on the plush velvet sofa, calmly flipping through a business magazine, a glass of iced water sweating on the table beside her. "Mommy," Amara whispered, the word catching in her throat. "I have something to tell you." Beatrice didn't look up. "If it is about that pauper, save your breath. I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was suffocating. Amara braced herself for the screaming, the flying glass, the violence that had greeted Daniel's proposal. But it didn't come. Beatrice froze, her hand hovering over a page. Slowly, she closed the magazine and looked at her daughter. Her face was unreadable, a mask of terrifying calm. "Pregnant," Beatrice repeated, the word rolling off her tongue without emotion. "With the shoemaker's child." "Yes," Amara breathed, stepping forward, mistaking the silence for resignation. "Ma'am, please. We love each other. This baby, it's your grandchild. We just want your blessing." Beatrice let out a long, slow breath and stood up. She walked over to Amara and smoothed her daughter's hair, a gesture that felt more like a threat than a caress. "You have forced my hand, Amara. A child is a complication I cannot ignore. Go to your room. You need to think about how to handle this proper introduction." Amara nearly collapsed with relief. She nodded tearfully, whispering a thank you before rushing upstairs, believing that the battle was finally won. She didn't see the way Beatrice's eyes hardened into flint the moment she turned her back. As soon as Amara's door clicked shut, Beatrice pulled her phone from her pocket. Her fingers flew across the screen as she dialed a private number. "It's time," she said, her voice dropping to a sinister hiss. "He is at the shop now. Make sure the unit is ready in 30 minutes. She hung up and walked to her private safe hidden behind a painting. With steady hands, she retrieved a heavy, diamond-encrusted wristwatch, a prototype from the company's luxury line. She slipped it into her purse and called for her driver. The ride to the market was silent. When they arrived, Daniel was just beginning to pack up his tools under the fading light. He stiffened when he saw Beatrice approach, bowing his head in respect. "Ma," he greeted warily. "I am not here to fight, boy," Beatrice lied, her voice smooth as oil. She stepped into the small shade of his umbrella, looking around with feigned curiosity. "Amara tells me there is a child. If you are to be a father, you must prove you are not a fool." While Daniel looked up, stunned by her seemingly softer tone, Beatrice shifted her purse. With the practiced sleight of hand of a woman who had manipulated boardrooms for decades, she let the diamond watch slide silently from her grip and into the depths of Daniel's open leather tool bag. "We will see what you are truly made of," she said, a cruel smile touching her lips as she turned to leave. Daniel watched her go, confused but hopeful, completely unaware that he was now standing on the edge of a grave she had just dug for him. The peace of the evening was shattered not by thunder, but by the screeching of tires and the heavy thud of boots hitting the dust. Daniel had just finished latching his wooden box when a police van swerved off the road, blinding him with its high beams. Before he could raise a hand to shield his eyes, 4 officers descended upon him like a pack of wolves. "That is him. The thief," one officer shouted, grabbing Daniel by the collar of his worn shirt and slamming him against the metal side of the van. Sir, please." Daniel gasped, the wind knocked out of him. "I haven't done anything. I am just a shoemaker." "A shoemaker with expensive tastes," the officer spat. He shoved Daniel aside and kicked the leather tool bag over. Tools scattered into the dirt, hammers, nails, polished, and there, gleaming unmistakably under the harsh headlights, lay the diamond-encrusted wristwatch. Daniel stared at it in horror. "No, that's not mine. I've never seen that before. It's a mistake." "Liar." A heavy baton struck Daniel across the ribs, sending him crumbling to his knees with a cry of agony. You stole from the Ego group. Do you think you can rob the hand that feeds the city? Blood trickled from Daniel's lip, mixing with the dust. He tried to crawl backward, hands raised in surrender, but another blow landed on his shoulder. I am innocent. Please, I swear on my life. From the darkness of the street corner, a scream pierced the chaos. Daniel. Amara sprinted toward the light, her chest heaving, sweat sticking her wrapper to her skin. She had sensed the malice in her mother's calm, the unnatural silence of the house, and she had run all the way to the market, arriving just in time to witness the nightmare. Leave him alone, she shrieked, lunging toward the officers who were dragging a limp Daniel toward the band's open cage. He didn't steal anything. It's a lie. She was mere inches away from reaching his outstretched hand when a manicured hand clamped around her arm, jerking her back with shocking strength. Amara spun around to find Madame Beatrice standing there, her face illuminated by the police lights, looking as cold and unyielding as a marble statue. Ma'am, stop them. Amara begged, clawing at her mother's grip. Tell them it's a mistake. Do you know he didn't take it? I know nothing of the sort, Beatrice said smoothly, her voice cutting through Amara's panic. I only know that a thief has been caught. You did this, Amara realized, her legs buckling as the police slammed the van doors shut, trapping Daniel's desperate cries inside. You framed him. Beatrice tightened her hold, pulling her weeping daughter close, not in comfort, but in captivity. As the siren wailed and the van sped away into the night, carrying the father of Amara's unborn child to a cell, Beatrice leaned down and whispered into her ear with chilling satisfaction. Don't look at me with such hate, Amara. One day you will thank me. I am not destroying you, I am saving you. The drive back to the mansion was a blur of tears and suffocating silence, but the explosion came the moment the heavy oak doors shut behind them. Amara pulled away from her mother's grip, her body trembling with a rage she had never known she possessed. You are evil, Amara screamed, her voice cracking against the high ceilings of the foyer. You sent an innocent man to prison. You planted that watch. How could you destroy a life just to save your pride? Madame Beatrice turned slowly, her expression bored, as if she were dealing with a tantrum rather than a tragedy. I did what was necessary to protect this family's name. A name you seem determined to drag through the mud. She looked pointedly at Amara's stomach. You carry the seed of a convict. A pauper. Do you think I will let you parade that shame in my house? I would rather live in a prison with him than in a palace with a monster like you. Amara spat, turning to run back to the door. Fine, Beatrice's voice was like a whip crack. Then go. Amara froze, turning back in confusion. Beatrice walked past her, opened the front door wide, and pointed into the darkness. If you choose the shoemaker, you choose his life. You are no longer my daughter. I have no daughter. I have no grandchildren. Walk out that door, and you leave with nothing but the clothes on your back. No money. No phone. No name. Mommy, please, it's night. I'm pregnant, Amara whispered, the fight draining out of her as the reality of the threat sank in. That is your burden, Beatrice said cold, shoving Amara hard. Amara stumbled over the threshold, barely catching herself on the stone steps. Don't come back until you have learned that love does not fill an empty belly. The heavy door slammed shut with a finality that echoed in Amara's bones. The lock clicked. Then the gate lights flickered off, plunging the compound into darkness. Amara pounded on the wood until her fists bled, screaming for her mother, but the house remained silent, a stone fortress against her pleas. That night, the heiress of the Okafor Empire slept curled up on the hard pavement outside her own gate, shivering as the dew soaked her dress. By the third day, the transformation was complete. Amara was no longer a person, she was a ghost haunting the city's underbelly. She learned that concrete steals the heat from your bones and that hunger is a physical pain, sharp and clawing. She slept under the eco bridge, clutching her stomach protectively while rats skittered nearby. Her silk dress turned gray with grime, her hair matted with dust. Passers-by who once would have envied her beauty now stepped over her with disgust, seeing only a dirty, pregnant beggar. Amara had lost her home, her love, and her dignity, leaving her with nothing but the terrifying will to keep her unborn child alive. The sun hung low over the Lagos horizon, painting the smog-choked streets in a deceptive, glorious gold. It was the kind of light that made everything look beautiful, except Amara. 3 days of sleeping on concrete had turned the once radiant heiress into a shadow. Her lips were cracked, her grey dress hung off her frame like a shroud, and the baby in her womb felt heavy, a constant reminder of the life she was failing to protect. She had wandered into the wealthy district of Victoria Island, drawn by the smell of food from the high-walled restaurants she used to dine in, but the guards had chased her away with batons. Now, dizzy and trembling, she stood on a busy corner as a sleek, black Rolls-Royce purred to a halt at the traffic light. It was a machine of pure power, its polished chrome reflecting the dying sun. This pedestrian silenced her shame. Amara stumbled forward, her swollen feet dragging against the pavement. She reached the passenger window just as the door clicked open. A man stepped out, tall, imposing, dressed in a navy suit that cost more than Daniel's entire shop. It was Chief Obi. Amara didn't know him, but she knew what he represented. Survival. She collapsed to her knees on the hot tar, raising a discarded blue plastic plate she had found in a bin. "Sir, please," she rasped, her voice broken. "Just leftovers. Even the bones. I am pregnant. Please." The reaction from the street was instant and cruel. "Look at this one," a passerby sneered, pointing a phone at her. "Schamless. They get pregnant just to beg. Go find the father," another woman shouted, clutching her purse tight. "Why harass decent people?" The mockery buzzed around her like flies, but Amara kept her eyes on the man's polished shoes, bracing herself to be kicked aside. Instead, silence fell over the immediate circle. Chief Obi wasn't moving. He wasn't looking at the crowd, he was staring down at her with an intensity that made the air shiver. He looked at the dusty braids, the terrified eyes, and the curve of her belly. He saw the ghost of the girl Daniel had described to him 1,000 times, the girl who loved a shoemaker, the girl with the eyes of an angel and the strength of a lioness. Daniel's Amara. The chief's face didn't twist in disgust. It softened into something unreadable, shook, perhaps, or a dawn of realization. He ignored the jeering crowd and crouched down, his expensive suit trousers touching the dirty street, bringing his face level with hers. "You are Amara," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement that stopped her heart. Amara looked up, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her cheeks. How do you know my name?" Chief Obi didn't answer. He simply reached out a hand, not to give her money, but to help her stand. "The game is over," he whispered, his voice low and fierce. "And they have made a terrible mistake." The boardroom of the Beggar Group was a fortress of glass and steel, a place where Madame Beatrice felt most alive. She sat at the head of the mahogany table, lecturing the junior executives on the importance of brand reputation, her voice sharp and imperious. She was in the middle of a sentence when the heavy double doors swung open with a force that rattled the windows. Chief Obi strode in, his face like thunder. Beatrice stood up, smoothing her skirt, a practiced smile plastered on her face. "Chief Obi, what a pleasant surprise. We were just discussing." "Sit down, Beatrice," Obi commanded, his voice silencing the room instantly. He didn't walk to the head of the table. He stopped and turned back to the door. "Come in." Beatrice scoffed, expecting a client. Instead, Amara walked in, head held high, wearing a clean, flowing gown that hid her bruised feet. And holding her hand was a man who made Beatrice's blood run cold. It was Daniel. But the dusty roadside shoemaker was gone. In his place stood a man radiating power, dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. He was clean-shaven, his skin glowing, his posture commanding. He didn't look like a peasant, he looked like a king. "What is the meaning of this?" Beatrice shrieked, her composure cracking. "Security. Why is this convict in my boardroom?" "You will watch your tone," Chief Obi said, stepping beside Daniel. "You are not speaking to a convict. You are speaking to the majority shareholder of the Beggar Group. My silent partner, Amara Daniel like." A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Beatrice stumbled back, gripping the table for support. "Lies," she whispered. "He fixes shoes. He is a nobody." "I chose to fix shoes," Daniel spoke for the first time, his voice calm and rich, echoing with authority. I wanted to know if there was anyone in this city who could love a man for his soul, not his wallet. He was testing the world, Beatrice. Amara passed. Jewel failed. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope and a set of heavy, gold keys. He turned to Amara, ignoring her mother completely. I told you I would work hard for us, he said softly, pressing the items into her trembling hands. These are the deeds to the Victoria Island estate. Our home. Jewel will never sleep on concrete again. Amara wept, clutching the keys to her chest, looking at the man she had loved in rags, now crowning her in riches. Beatrice stared at the keys, her face turning an ash gray. She looked from the billionaire she had framed to the daughter she had disowned. Amara. Daniel, please, I didn't know. You knew, Daniel said coldly, turning to face her. Joe knew he was a human being, and that wasn't enough for you. A looked at Chief Obi and nodded. Madam Beatrice, Obi declared, pointing to the door. You are fired. Security will escort you out. Joe leave with nothing. No car. No name. As the guards grabbed her arms, dragging the screaming woman out of the empire she thought she owned, Daniel wrapped his arm around Amara. They walked out of the building and into the sunlight, climbing into the back of the waiting Rolls-Royce, leaving the past in the dust as they drove toward a future built on truth. The boardroom of the Beggar Group was a fortress of glass and steel, a place where Madame Beatrice felt most alive. She sat at the head of the mahogany table, lecturing the junior executives on the importance of brand reputation, her voice sharp and imperious. She was in the middle of a sentence when the heavy double doors swung open with a force that rattled the windows. Chief Obi strode in, his face like thunder. Beatrice stood up, smoothing her skirt, a practiced smile plastered on her face. Chief Obi, what a pleasant surprise. We were just discussing. Sit down, Beatrice, Obi commanded, his voice silencing the room instantly. He didn't walk to the head of the table. He stopped and turned back to the door. Come in. Beatrice scoffed, expecting a client. Instead, Amara walked in, head held high, wearing a clean, flowing gown that hid her bruised feet. And holding her hand was a man who made Beatrice's blood run cold. It was Daniel. But the dusty roadside shoemaker was gone. In his place stood a man radiating power, dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. He was clean-shaven, his skin glowing, his posture commanding. He didn't look like a peasant, he looked like a king. What is the meaning of this? Beatrice shrieked, her composure cracking. Security. Why is this convict in my boardroom? You will watch your tone, Chief Obi said, stepping beside Daniel. You are not speaking to a convict. You are speaking to the majority shareholder of the Beggar Group. My silent partner, Amara Daniel like. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Beatrice stumbled back, gripping the table for support. Lies, she whispered. He fixes shoes. A is a nobody. I chose to fix shoes, Daniel spoke for the first time, his voice calm and rich, echoing with authority. I wanted to know if there was anyone in this city who could love a man for his soul, not his wallet. He was testing the world, Beatrice. Amara passed. Jewel failed. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope and a set of heavy, gold keys. He turned to Amara, ignoring her mother completely. I told you I would work hard for us, he said softly, pressing the items into her trembling hands. These are the deeds to the Victoria Island estate and our marriage license. Jewel will never sleep on concrete again. Amara wept, clutching the keys to her chest, looking at the man she had loved in rags, now crowning her in riches. Beatrice stared at the keys, her face turning an ash gray. She looked from the billionaire she had framed to the daughter she had disowned. Amara. Daniel, please, I didn't know. You knew, Daniel said coldly, turning to face her. Joe knew he was a human being, and that wasn't enough for you. He looked at Chief Obi and nodded. Madam Beatrice, Obi declared, pointing to the door. You are fired. Security will escort you out. Joe leave with nothing. As the guards grabbed her arms, dragging the screaming woman out of the empire she thought she owned, Daniel wrapped his arm around Amara. They walked out of the building and into the sunlight, climbing into the back of the waiting Rolls-Royce, leaving the past in the dust as they drove toward a future built on truth. Moral of the story: true wealth is found in the heart, not the pocket. Amara passed the ultimate test of loyalty, proving that genuine love is worth more than all the gold in the world. Madame Beatrice learned the hard way that pride always comes before a fall. She judged a book by its cover, never realizing that the hands she mocked for being dirty were the same hands that built the empire she worked for. Remember, the person you look down on today might be the person holding your destiny tomorrow. Never let status blind you to the value of a human soul, because life has a funny way of reversing roles when we least expect it. I hope Amara and Daniel's journey inspired you to believe that truth always triumphs over lies. Question for you: do you think Amara should eventually forgive her mother, or did Beatrice get exactly what she deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe so you never miss our next powerful video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.